Hey guys, Matt here. Welcome to Learn to Discern. Today I want to talk to you about how we as believers can have power in the message that we proclaim. This is not only for pastors or official teachers within the church, this is for anybody who's wanting to evangelize and have power in their message. And let me tell you, the key to that power may not be what you think. But before we get to our teaching, if you guys want to help promote Christian content here on YouTube, please go ahead and take a second now to subscribe to my channel, and thank you in advance. Okay guys, we're going to begin our teaching in 1 Corinthians chapter 1 and verse 17. This is the Apostle Paul writing. For Christ did not send me to baptize, but to preach the gospel, and not with words of eloquent wisdom, lest the cross of Christ be emptied of its power. Already, I'd like to give a little bit of historical background about the city of Corinth. Corinth was one of the leading cities in Greece, and if you know much about Greek culture and Greek ideals, they were very big on philosophy and wisdom. And so in the town, the city of Corinth, it was not uncommon to have professional speakers travel into the town and basically give a speech where they would charge money to people. So the city of Corinth really highly valued a person's ability to speak persuasively. They wanted to see your argumentation. How much of a command do you have of the language? Can you persuade us with what is going on? And so we already see the Apostle Paul pushing back against this idea when he said that he was preaching the gospel not with words of eloquent wisdom, lest the cross of Christ be emptied of its power. And we need to understand that the power of the gospel message is not in our eloquence. It is not in our persuasion. It is in the message itself. In fact, we see that in Romans 1:16. For I am not ashamed of the gospel, for it is the power of God for salvation to everyone who believes, to the Jew first, and also to the Greek. So the gospel message, just talking about Jesus, who he is, what he accomplished on the cross, the gospel, all the basics of the gospel, the power is in that message, not in your eloquence. And so the Apostle Paul makes it very clear that that's what he was preaching. So let's continue now in verse 18. For the word of the cross is folly to those who are perishing, but to us who are being saved, it is the power of God. For it is written, I will destroy the wisdom of the wise, and the discernment of the discerning I will thwart. Where is the one who is wise? Where is the scribe? Where is the debater of this age? Has not God made foolish the wisdom of the world? For since in the wisdom of God the world did not know God through wisdom, it pleased God through the folly of what we preach to save those who believe. So remember the context into which Paul is writing. Where is the debater of this age? Where's that persuasive speaker that you have? Because he would say that our basic message is foolishness. It is folly. But it's saying, listen, that person that you think is so persuasive, they don't have real wisdom. God has real wisdom. In fact, he is so wise that he has ordained that it would be through the simplicity, through the folly from the way that other people would perceive it, of the message of the cross to save people. He's like, it doesn't make sense in the wisdom of the world, but it demonstrates God wisdom. The simplicity of the gospel message is what will save people. So look at verse 22. For Jews demand signs and Greeks seek wisdom, but we preach Christ crucified, a stumbling block to Jews and folly to Gentiles. But to those who are called, both Jews and Greeks, Christ the power of God and the wisdom of God. For the foolishness of God is wiser than men, and the weakness of God is stronger than men. So Paul understood that the Greeks were seeking after wisdom. They would be impressed if he came to Corinth and he was speaking persuasively and with eloquence, and certainly he would have been able to do so. And he said, I didn't do that. I didn't do that because if I did, the cross would be emptied of its power. And the power unto salvation is in the simplicity of the gospel message. So now let's skip ahead here to the beginning of chapter 2. And we're really going to see that he is saying the same thing here. And I, when I came to you, brothers, did not come proclaiming to you the testimony of God with lofty speech or wisdom. For I decided to know nothing among you except Jesus Christ and him crucified. Paul is making it clear it was not about how intelligent I sounded. It wasn't about how I could put my words together in a certain manner. No, I just wanted to preach Christ and him crucified. That is what he focused on. That's what we should be focusing on today. Verse 3, and I was with you in weakness and in fear and much trembling. And my speech and my message were not in plausible words of wisdom, but in demonstration of the Spirit and of power, so that your faith might not rest in the wisdom of men, but in the power of God. So, he came, his speech and his message were not in words of plausible wisdom. It wasn't about the eloquence. He says, but in demonstration of the Spirit and of power. Now, some people have looked at that and they will say, so it's not about your words, it's about demonstrating the power of God, right? It's about signs, wonders, and miracles. I've heard people teach that before, but pay attention. What is in demonstration of the Spirit and of power? He said, it's my speech and my message. So he's saying the simplicity of the message is what demonstrates the power of the Spirit, because it's in the simplicity of the gospel message that a person is saved, and that is how God is glorified in it. It's the power of the message itself, of the gospel message. So he is absolutely talking about his message, and he says, so that your faith might not rest in the wisdom of men, but in the power of God. This is a key point, and this is something that we can take away practically from all of this. If your strategy to reach people for Christ is, let me see how eloquent I can be with my words. Let me try to be pragmatic about things. Let me see if I can come up with the best argumentation to try to convince somebody why they should come to Christ. Well, okay, but what happens when somebody else comes along and they have a better argument than you do? What happens when somebody comes along and they are better at persuading people than you are? People's faith was resting in your argument and in your persuasion. That's not good. We don't want people's faith to rest in that. There are people who can argue better than I can, who are more persuasive. There are people who are more eloquent with their speech than I am. But what has power to save people? It's not how well spoken I am. It's the power of the gospel message. We need to be proclaiming that in your preaching, in your teaching. It needs to be the centrality of Christ. You need to be talking about Christ and Him crucified. Certainly that does not mean that you can't ever preach or teach on different topics, but the major theme of what you're talking about needs to be Jesus and Him crucified, and especially in your evangelism. It's not about trying to persuade people with your lofty arguments. There's a time and a place to have apologetics and to present certain arguments and to reason with people. There's a time and a place for it. But ultimately, we need to get back to the gospel message, the simplicity of that. It is when we do so that people come to faith, as the gospel is the power of God unto salvation. Okay, guys, I hope this teaching was a blessing to you. If it was and you want to get more content like this out to people on the internet, please make sure you take a second now to subscribe to my channel. Also, please remember that you can partner together with me financially in ministry, as I have profiles on both Ko-fi and Patreon. I'll put links to both of them in the description. You can give a one-time gift or sign up for monthly recurring donations. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, God bless.